Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's been a long time, but we are back and we are here with a very exciting guest. Not only is this person a couple of our most beloved ghosts in the Ghostbusters franchise, it's his birthday. Ladies and gentlemen, we are excited to have a conversation with Kevin Mangold. Kevin, thank you so much for making some time for us today and answering some questions for our group.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. This is going to be awesome. I've been looking forward to it all days.
Yeah,
That's
awesome.
that's a high bar on a birthday, so we're excited to have you, and thank you for making time for us.
Of course.
Absolutely. So we know that we'll get to the Ghostbusters stuff for sure. But if anybody follows Kevin and if they follow you on Instagram, you are a very exciting follow because you are posting pictures of tons of stuff that you've done. And so just to kind of start at the beginning, I would love to hear a little bit. How did you get started in being a costumed actor, an actor, a puppeteer, a jockey? Like, where do we even begin with all that? Because the list is long.
Yeah, it started in high school mostly. I was very ambitious in getting out of a small town. I grew up in a small town in Northern California, and I could not wait to get out of town. And so we graduated on a Friday, and we had that all night party that most schools have. And so I stayed
Yep.
up all night for the all night party with everybody. And then Saturday morning, before even sleeping, I had everything ready in my car, ready to roll. And I headed out to Los Angeles. And that was that was the beginning of my career. And I had already kind of set things up when I was in high school. I wrote a few letters, so because I tell people all about that you can still do this. Just write letters to agents and say, hey, this is what I want to do. And then some of them, most of them will tell you get out of here, and a few of them might say, okay, come meet me. And that's what I did. So I went down there and I met with an agent, and I signed with my first agent when I was 17. And I'd done a couple little commercial type things when I was younger, but I didn't have an agent or anything like that, nothing professional really. So that's really where I started. And my first professional suit was actually before I even it was the summer between my senior year and USC, and that was at Marriott's Great America, and I played Brainy Smurf. And so I went all around the park and I took the pictures and was like the regular street character, where I learned how to interact with people and how to be the character and all of that stuff. But then I was also in a stage show that was called Song of the Smurfs, and so that enabled me to 4 times a day. It was like a 7-minute show or something, to get the audience in and out. But I learned kind of what is stage right, what is stage left,
Yeah.
and so I learned those things, and that was my first real foray into like suits, doing suits. And then I went on to Disneyland and I played Mickey Mouse, played Pinocchio, and a whole bunch of other Chip and Dale, both Chip and Dale, and learned the difference between the two, which is important. And I don't know if you can tell, but Chip has the brown nose like a chocolate chip. Dale has a red nose. So if you ever questioned, Chip has the nose like a chocolate chip. So now you guys,
A little pro
you'll
tip.
you'll
That's
yeah
awesome.
you'll win the trivia contest if you
Yeah.
happen to be involved in that. Yeah.
So
So
I'm curious because for the most part nowadays, the helmets, the faces, they move, eyes blink, and all that. But I'm guessing when you started, there wasn't a lot of that yet. How I would imagine there's a challenge in emoting and like how do you even begin to act in a suit like that where the face is static and it- is there something to that? Is there a way that you just figure that out or what's is there an art to it?
there probably is. I'm not sure that I'm aware of it. For me, honestly, the eyes moving, not moving, and now it's eyebrows, and there's a lot of other things, cheekbones and things like that now that move. Those are more for the on camera characters. But it's incredible to me how much emotion a still face can provide when somebody is buying in on the magic. And I can just say, look at all of the Mickey Mouse video footage you've seen of him skating and standing on a parade float and sitting on the back of a horse waving. And in none of those are the cheeks moving or the mouth smiling, or none of those are the eyes blinking, none of that.
Hmm.
And yet it's Mickey Mouse. And people look at, kids and adults alike, we look at it and say, wow, look how alive it is. And I think that's just to, our brain fills in what's missing often, but also we look at what it is that we what's important to us, and then the other stuff drops away. And so as Mickey Mouse, if you yay and you throw your hands up and your body's up, and or you stand with your hands on your shoulders, well, people are going to look at those things and they're not going to be looking right at the eyes, and so they forget that the eyes aren't moving. And I think in their memory they remember the eyes blinking and looking at them. And I've heard people say that. Well, I've heard, like I remember you, looking over at me, or things that I couldn't have done.
Yeah.
And so I think in that way, we like when we watch a movie and something silly happens, we just, oh, whatever, it's because we believe in it and we've suspended that disbelief. And so I think the same applies to creatures. And I have some just incredible, fantastic memories of connections I've made with children and adults in various creature suits. And there's just something about the connection. And so how do those emotions come through? I honestly think it's not even in eyes or smiles or any of that. It's in feeling it. And when you feel it for real, it just portrays itself on the outside somehow for real.
Yeah, I mean, you're creating moments and magic and an experience. Because every time I go, living in Orlando, I'm there all the time. It's very real for everybody who's meeting these characters. And so I think you're right. I think it's something beyond acting. I think you're creating these magical moments that and memories, these core memories that people will take with them for a lifetime.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones, if I can tell it real quick.
Yeah.
When I was I did Peter Pan for a while and did the suits for quite a while, but then I got moved up into the face character of Peter Pan, and that's a whole different thing because now you're talking and you have to be in character all the time. And so I would be in character, for 8 hours a day, with the exception of the breaks. And actually, even many cases, even on the breaks, I'd go in the back, I would still be Peter Pan, which was probably super annoying to people. But I there was one experience that I had that I'll remember above all others, was that on one day that I wasn't working, I was washing my car in this car wash bay, with the big sprayer or whatever. And this little kid, like maybe 6 or 7, came just sprinting over, Peter Pan. And he was just screaming. And then the dad came over and it's like, oh, sorry. We were just at Disneyland yesterday and he thinks you're Peter Pan. And so I said to the dad, actually, I didn't say it in front of the kid. The mother had come over at that point and kind of kept him aside. But I said, come here. And the dad came over and I said, actually, I am Peter Pan. And I totally remember meeting you. And he was like, oh, yeah. And I remember the experience of meeting that one kid because he was so excited. And it was during the parade. I was going down the parade and I remember going back and saying hi. And he was taking pictures. And then I'd run up and catch back up to the parade route and stuff. And I totally remember that kid. And then so to be outside of the park in just, jeans and a t-shirt, that kid saw me as Peter Pan, which was really awesome. So in his mind, awesome. He had met Peter Pan. And no matter where I was now, I was Peter Pan. And so I've always remembered that one.
So you must have had a lot of experiences like that, at Disney, right? It's probably, I would imagine if you're a character at Disney, it's a certain kind of experience. And I don't want to jump into Ghostbusters quite yet, but I do want to ask this question. What has been your experience so far with the Ghostbusters community? Because you've come into a big family with a lot of people, a lot of different personalities, and a lot of people all over the world. So what are your takeaways so far?
Well, I'll start from the beginning when I was very first asked to do this, and I wasn't even told what part I was playing for a long time. Ariane Tutin, and the rest of the shop, they were working on it diligently without really even telling me what it was until I finally got to go in there. And well, actually I saw a couple of weeks prior, I saw the mold and everything. So, but I had to go in and do the gel thing and all of that stuff, and weeks of work of them measuring and taking photos of my arms and making fun of my long arms and stuff before I had any idea. And so I didn't know what I played a lot of creature suits. And so I was just expecting another job. I'm going to go on the set. Nobody's going to know it's me because that's the vast majority of my, I've been doing this for 30 something years now and nobody knows who it is inside the suit, But Ariane said to me, okay, get ready for this one. This is going to be a really big one. And you're really going to have like a lot of new friends, and people will welcome you, and this is going to be huge. And when he finally did tell me it was Ghostbusters, I was just overwhelmed, like, oh my god, this is insane. And so I guess I just said all of that part to me, and that I was kind of fairly warned ahead of time how awesome this was going to be, but I could not have expected. It's been really overwhelming in a way. I'm easily overwhelmed, I guess. But it has been just so great that everybody has ups and downs, right? We go through a week or two of feeling like, yeah, the world is mine, and then a couple of weeks of, oh, nobody's calling, or how come I miss so and so, or whatever it is, and we kind of have that cycle. And so what's interesting about the position I'm in right now is when I'm going through that cycle of, oh, I miss people and stuff's not so fun right now, I can always just go on to some social media or look at my email or go to my PO box, and I've got a bunch of mail, and I've got a bunch of comments, and I've got patches, and I've got letters, and I've got, hey, can you sign this for me? And that just it changes, turns things around, and whatever. I mean, it's amazing what people saying, hey, you're great. That's amazing what that does for you. It feels really good. So
That's
Well,
so
and
cool to hear.
it's cool because like you're forever Slimer.
yeah, I've a few people have said that, and that's one of the overwhelming things. I try to wrap that. I mean, it's the case with every role every actor ever plays, right? If you're Forrest Gump, you're forever Forrest Gump, or whatever it is you happen to play. And so if I'm, the leprechaun in Leprechaun's Revenge, I'm forever that leprechaun. And so in some ways that doesn't mean a lot, like to say, well, you're forever, the Brightburn creature, doesn't mean a lot to people. But I mean, every movie does have a group of people who it means a lot to. But I hadn't really ever encountered a movie like Ghostbusters where it means so much to so many people. And so I guess on that line, on the importance of the movie part of it, that's been really, I was going to say fun, but it's more than fun. It's been like heavy. It's been kind of deep,
Yeah.
because I've only done a couple signings now, but through the emails and through my PO box, and in North Dakota when I went to Minot to sign there, I met some people that I'll remember forever and that I'll want to keep in touch with forever, and I consider friends. And some people who like were crying and said, my father's in the hospital right now. He couldn't make it, but he wanted to be here more than anything. And he introduced me to Ghostbusters, and like just all of that heaviness is, it's a lot. So,
Yeah. I
It's
already
wonderful
love.
though. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
it has been, it has been really wonderful. Yeah. And I mean, overwhelming in a good way,
Yeah.
overwhelmingly, overwhelming in an emotional way, like, crying happy tears. It's hard to distinguish what kind of tears are those, but no doubt about it, this has all been so positive and just better than I can really sort of explain in a way without sounding like a jerk. I mean, I'm trying to sort of tone it down. I try now. I realize I listened to a couple podcasts that I've done, and like, wow, I sound like, oh, look at me, look at what I'm doing. And I don't mean it in that way. I mean, I feel like, look at me, because holy crap, I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm just a guy, who was plucked out of obscurity to go, hey, want to do this super awesome thing? And so here I am. I could have just as easily been on the opposite end of this interview right now going, how do you feel about
Yeah.
playing, whatever.
Yeah.
And so to find myself in this position is a little bit otherworldly, where I feel like, I do say this to people often now, I feel like I'm sitting back watching it happen to someone else, and when I sign autographs, I'm like kind of watching me, hey, Kevin, quick, you got to sign this autograph for that guy. And it's like someone else is doing it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's awesome.
But
I love seeing this from the beginning. This is really
yeah.
cool.
And I, and I
Thanks.
and I think too, like you're being modest from the standpoint of it. You're right. It could have been anybody, but this is really coming after decades of work in the industry and making connections. And so that like don't sell yourself short. We know that this doesn't just randomly happen. Although if they're working on another film and they need me to come get suited up, I'm
Scolari
glad to do
Brothers.
it. Yeah, there we go.
I always joke. I always pretend, I always say the Corsican brothers, so that all the Ghostbusters fans, no, he doesn't really know. It's the Scoleri brother. I just do that as a joke, but I'm glad you said it first. I always talk about how important the Corsican brothers are to Ghostbusters. I'm like, no.
It's awesome. I like it. I like trolling the fans a little bit.
Of course.
I don't know any, I don't know a tenth of the data that's known by Ghostbuster fans. So I'm learning, I'm coming up to speed, but I'm reading all the, I am loving it. I'm, about all the comic books, and obviously watched all the movies had already, but I was never one to collect movie stuff, but I've got, ton of Ghostbuster stuff now. So luckily.
Yeah.
So I assume Ghostbusters wasn't like your favorite movie. That would be like complete perfect scenario. But were you a Ghostbusters fan? Before? Had you known the role before? Is it something you would have pursued, kind of thing?
I've been very familiar with Slimer because a very good friend of mine, James Van Heist, is the author of the original Real Ghostbusters, I guess, like a bunch of issues 1 and 2 and a whole bunch of them. So in college, when I was 17, I met him through a friend and through a like professional filmmaker contact. And so I've known of the character, and obviously, yes, in 84, and it's probably 85 by the time, our small town got it. But yeah, in the late 80s, I definitely watched it in the theater, and I do remember being super excited when I learned. I don't know how many years after it was, but when I learned that the thing was written and directed, and well, not directed, I guess, but written and starred, by Dan Aykroyd, and because I remember being super excited about Rocky, learning that you could write a movie and star in it and direct it, and like, crap, that's okay. That's what I'm doing. I'm doing that. And so, yes, I was totally aware of Ghostbusters, and I did like the movie. I keep saying I've never been one to like become a total fan of any like buy posters and all that stuff. Empire of the Sun, actually, when I was in college, the movie Empire of the Sun was kind of the first movie that I even went just to a theater to see more than once. There's very few movies. I've seen Ghostbusters 8 times now in the theater, Frozen Empire. But I went to see Empire of the Sun whole bunch of times in the theater, mainly out of a filmmaking. Like I was looking at the shots and I was just, amazed. And that was like the first time I really started getting into film. So I guess that's a long way of saying I was a fan of Ghostbusters as a filmmaker, and I liked watching it as a filmmaker. I never had any idea that I would ever be a part of it in any way, or, any designs to do that or anything. So, but then because of my knowledge of how huge Ghostbusters has become over the years, when I found out that I was going to not only be in a Ghostbusters movie, but playing Slimer, then it was just like, oh, wow, and so my interest grew, exponentially, obviously, in the character and everything. And then the more that I've done delving into watching like hours and hours of tape, basically, like literally I would watch, that the hallway, at the cart, eating and drinking food at the cart. I watched that for hours over and over and over, and mimicked it in the mirror. And I watched, because I want to learn his movements, how people know his movements. And it wasn't enough that Ariane was making Slimer exact to the 1984 design, but I wanted to be as exact as I could be as well. So I've really taken in an awful lot of Ghostbusters lately.
So that's great. That leads to, we had some people in our group ask questions, and Chris Carter and Matthew Myers have both kind of were interested in, so how did you prepare for Slimer? How did you get into the mind of Slimer? And then they specifically asked if you connected with Mark Brian Wilson and Robin Shelby at all, leading into creating Slimer for Frozen Empire.
Yeah, a couple weeks before we had to ship everything off to London, I went into Ariane's shop, and I had already been in kind of the unpainted version of the suit, and they were modifying the length of things and putting straps. Billy Bryan made the strap that goes underneath, and when I say strap, if you've seen any of the photos, it's the embarrassment strap, basically, because it's meant to hold Slimer down from rising, and so it comes around my legs like a harness, but it didn't really go around my legs as much. It went around just sort of my crotch, and so it was like this strap that just kind of tied around. And so every time I moved my shoulders, I would get jerked. So I'm always going to remember that part of the suit. But but yeah, Mark Brian Wilson came in and Brian came in on that day, and we did a bunch of like sample stuff. We put a couple tables together, and I squashed down between them to kind of imitate the trash pile that I was going to do. And I remember once, I'd love to see this video. Somebody's got it. It was obviously being filmed, and I assume Ariane has it. But I had a bunch of trash, candy, and box of cereal, and I was just dumping it down. And at that point, we didn't have the screen separating my face. Like when we were filming, there was a black screen with tongue and teeth and everything, and so when I dumped stuff in it, it would just kind of hit the screen and it wouldn't go down anywhere. So if I wanted something to disappear, then we'd have to kind of open that screen up, and then it would come down like onto me and come down, my chest, and ultimately down onto the floor, because the suit kind of was open at the bottom. So anyway, so we dumped food, and it was the greatest thing. It was so much fun just throwing stuff in, and I really felt like that was the first time that I really sort of was able to start working the character. And Robin Shelby and Mark Brian Wilson were invited to that, and so they were there watching. And it wasn't really until I went around to the other side and was able to watch the monitor of what they were shooting that it really. I'd actually looked in a mirror once in the suit before we started shooting, but which I like to do. To you got to get where are the eyes and where are the things. You got to know where to touch. And but watching that monitor, watching a Slimer come to life, and we were all laughing, and I was laughing in the suit, and we were all just, wow, that's there's a Slimer right there. He's right there. And so I had a sort of overwhelming. That's maybe I'm overusing that word, but I had just a moment of where it just washed over me, like it got a bit emotional, like, shit, this is me. I'm right here. I'm looking at this view of Slimer through his mouth, and I'm in it right now, peeking out a hole, looking. It was just very surreal, and then on top of that, I was able to talk to Mark Brian Wilson and Robin Shelby, and they were able to watch the video and give me, pointers and feedback. There were definitely things that they both suggested and that I incorporated, and maybe not everything, because, I had my own ideas as well, but they were definitely helpful. And just the support alone from them was enough to really help me, because I'm like everything I do, I second guess. I want to be super good at everything I do, and so I've had a little concern, am I gonna be able to do what they did? My God, he was so good in that movie. When I watch it, like, that was so good, am I gonna be able to match that? And so but they put me at ease and gave me the confidence to just go for it. And I think of it like if you go on stage and the audition person is critical, and makes you feel unsafe on stage, and you're going to perform differently than if they're like, no man, just go for it, do whatever you want, and if it sucks, then we're going to do it again. And
Yeah.
that's really freeing. And I not only from Robin and Mark, but from Ariane and from Jason and from Gil and from everybody, it really was just, hey man, you are Slimer, just do it, and
Yeah. Are you aware at all of, like, did you and Robin have conversation about how it's different, or maybe you and Mark, or maybe conversation about how similar your suit was to the one that Mark wore in '84? Was there any talk about that?
Not with Mark or with Robin, but with Ariane and the team. It was made clear right from the start that this Slimer was, a continuation of the original Slimer, and that there was a lot of other directions Slimer has gone, but this one was not incorporating those. This one was going back to the original, and I think in design and as well as temperament and mentality and movement and all of that stuff. So yeah, Ariane made it very clear to me right from the start, and you probably heard the story by now, but I was absolutely blown away, and still am to this day, to know that Ariane took some of the foam and ground it up from the original Slimer in 1984 and ground it up into the powder, ground it up into the foam that he made, the one that I was wearing. And so that was just like, wow, I'm wearing Slimer. I am in,
Yeah.
in Slimer. I'm actually in Slimer. So
That's
That
something that like people don't know, but that's what I love about Jason and Gil and this team, the care that they and how delicately and tender they treat the original films. As fans, we love hearing that stuff.
I want to. Can we jump into Frozen Empire? Because I definitely
of
want to
course,
ask about your time in the attic. I guess it's the attic of the firehouse. Is that what we're calling it?
yeah, the attic, yeah.
Uh, that's my favorite sequence in the film. I enjoyed the film. I liked it quite a bit. But for us being the guys who love rubber monsters and practical effects, that that sequence is for us. So can you just take us through what it's like to be in the firehouse and just what that was like?
Yeah. This whole experience has been, unreal and unbelievable and super exciting. And, not from I've have been on sets with lots of famous people and I've worked with, the best of them, and so not from a standpoint of like of being I wouldn't say that I was like starstruck at any point, but being in the middle of a world that you're familiar with so well from that's not real, and all of a sudden be in the middle of this real world was was surreal in a way. Uh, everything, every detail in that whole. There were a couple different sets, first of all. So the attic was kind of separate from the rest. In fact, on a completely different in a different studio entirely.
Mm.
But the entire um, firehouse, with the exception of the attic, and the roof was done all together, all stacked, all in one, and it was very real. And so you could slide down the pole, and you could, which was closed, but I did. And I took time to run around and meet people and do things that at time off when other people were doing things, and I took time to go take pictures of tons of stuff, and it was just so weird because it's easy to forget that you're on a film set because every single book is in story and it's real and would really be there. There's not a single thing that would have come out after the time that like nothing is out of place and nothing is wouldn't fit. And so it's easy to just be like, well, here I am in the Ghostbusters firehouse and I'm looking at all of their suits and their proton packs and here it is, right? So um that all of that was really super awesome. Now, as for the attic, I did have all of that. I took plenty of time before I got on set, like in terms of in character and all of that stuff, to just walk around the day before we were filming and take pictures and look at stuff. And there's just so much. There was in the attic, it was just packed full of t-shirts and patches and stickers and helmets and computers and so much stuff that it took me, a whole day to look at. Um, on the flip side of that, there was the whole character part of it. Playing a role of it, which I always am prepared. I'm a super homeworker. I do homework when it's not necessary to do homework, and I really did my homework on this one. In that, I really wanted to make sure that I was the character. Um, this hasn't happened before in Slimer's history, in that he was on set with the actors. Everything else has always been with the blue or the green screen, and so they've always
Hmm.
been sized in because Mark's a big guy. He's a big guy. He's not the size of Slimer, and so I would shoot him on blue screen and shrink him down, and make him the size that they want him to be on the screen. But in this case, they wanted me acting right directly with the actors, and so that's why they picked a guy that's 5 foot tall and not 6 feet tall or whatever. And so a lot of that that had a lot for me, was important because even when I'm doing a simple stunt, when we're getting down to the countdown to before the action, I'll have a little routine, but I'll say what I'm grateful for. But mostly I get into um who the character is, and like I said, even if it's just a stunt, even if I'm doubling a kid that has to ride a bike off a hill and fall, I still will get into my head, and in those moments before action, I'm not thinking as Kevin, like, look, here I am on a film set. I'm thinking as Johnny that's going to go down the hill because he's a dummy or whatever it is, whatever the motivation is for Johnny to go down the hill. And so that didn't change with Slimer. I went in the morning of the day I was filming, stayed out of the attic as Kevin, stayed in the dressing room and all that. And then I've spoken to Finn lots of times and hung out, and I was able to, I was working on another movie, Y2K, with another one of the It actors, and so I was able to go back and forth. And Jaden Martell, I was working with Jaden Martell, and so I could go back and forth between Finn and Jaden, and hey, he said this, and so that was fun. But outside of the day that I went in as Kevin, I keep kind of saying that as someone who like here I'm the actor portraying this. But the morning that we were filming, I really tried my best to stay off the set. There were a couple of times when they called me up, we had to measure things, and I'd go back down. But I really tried to just stay in the dressing room, not let anybody see me. And then when I came out, just directly go and get in the suit and not. It's been the same ever since I played Brainy Smurf and Mickey Mouse. And I don't talk to anybody when I'm inside the suit. I'm certainly not somebody that's going to communicate as me. I'm not going to talk about if I'm hot, or what I mean, like, oh, it's sure hot in here, because Mickey Mouse, it might be, hey, it's hot out here, it's a great day, but it's not hot in here. And
Right.
and so what it was like being on the set that day is it was like being Slimer for a day. And so it became emotional, and it became kind of heavy for me. And the thoughts of, why is this entity, because person is even something that a lot of people can't agree on, but why am I here for so many years that my form has completely diminished. And so that was part of it. What's my problem? What am I doing here all of this time? And if I'm a ghost, I've got the ability to go out, come and go. I can go do things. I can go, and I did honestly throw out the majority, all of the real Ghostbusters stuff, because Slimer's not going to be driving machinery and things. So from my view,
Yeah.
and I just think from the way that Gil handled him, he didn't have him coming out and saying, "Hey, who is that?" Or anything like that. And it was a mean monster growl, and that to me is who Slimer was, because in 1984 that's who he was. So getting to work with Finn, doing that whole scene, I actually came up out of the hole and came right up to him, and then kind of went around him, and then they shot me going away from him, and then of course in effects did the going through part. But I was there the whole time, watched him get slimed with the machine, with the slime thrower, and got to like be a part of that entire scene. I was right there, like when they shot all of Finn coming through the door, and I'm coming to shoot your face off and all that. I was right there. I was inches away, just watching the whole scene. So that whole attic scene is, I experienced not only from what I see on the screen, but what I saw, from my own eyes, just sitting a couple feet away from the camera. So.
What one of another group member, Jeff Schreck, had asked, is there, if you can say, in hindsight, you said you've seen the movie 8 times in theater. Is there anything that you shot that didn't make the final film that you wish may have?
There's only one thing. I don't know how much I'm supposed to say about this stuff. It gets me. I'm afraid. I've already gotten kind of in trouble for all the pictures I've posted. So I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say. There was one. I'll tell you. I was super happy when I saw the movie, because the pizza eating, I was afraid wasn't going to make it, and I had so much fun shooting that and watching it on the monitor and everything. So I was excited when I watched it that everything, all of the bits, everything
Yeah.
was in it. There is one thing that wasn't used, and God, I just don't know how much to say about it.
The pizza scene is so great, at least for me, because it was so unexpected. Like I think at that point in the film, I thought we're done with Slimer. Slimer's come, Slimer's gone. He's had his time. And then out of nowhere, in the most glorious fashion, in getting the pizza. I mean, that was such a great gag, but such a great scene, and I loved it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Both in the film, and having all of these memories of doing it is it's weird because you watch something from one view, but then you also have the memory of it from a whole other angle, and when it's like the internal angle, it's kind of weird. But that day, that was one of the most fun days I think I've ever had. Just the whole day was just so awesome. But yeah, that was, those were real pizzas. And so that was a real pizza. And so we did practice with the rubber one a few times, but I did get to shove real pizzas down, and it was all running down my shirt and running all over, and it was getting all over the suit. And everybody was cracking up on the set, which is, for a performer, that's what you want. You want to hear people's interactions. And I do have a video that I don't know how I'm ever going to, like, I don't know that I don't know if I can just put it up on like Instagram or whatever, but I've got two really awesome videos. A couple of times I've gone like to signings and I'm like, here, check this out. And I show people on my phone, like, you got to see this. But I have this really awesome video that someone filmed, not even sure who it is actually, from behind Gil. And so you can see a little bit of the monitor and you can see Gil standing there directing, but then most of it you can see me up on the stage with the green screen in the back. And then the puppeteer Robin taking the pizza and kind of waves it up toward my mouth. And then when I grab it, and we did it not a ton of times. I'd say maybe 5 or 6 takes. Maybe we didn't do that a whole bunch of times. And really, what it wound up being, what made it the best take, the take that was taken, that was used rather. What made it the best is just the pizza became pliable. In the beginning they were a little bit hard. That the bottoms were a little bit hard, and so I had a hard time getting it in my mouth. It would kind of splat me in the face rather than fold up and go in the mouth. And so by the 4th or 5th take, whichever it was, the last one, which was the take we used, the very last one, obviously, it was more bendy and it kind of started to get droopy. And so when I grabbed it, it just drooped and all came perfectly folded up right into my mouth. And Gil's like putting his arms up like the Rocky champion, like, yeah, he's like laughing and clapping and everybody's laughing. And I was just cracking up too. And then after I got off the stage, I came around and I was still in the suit. And so that's one of the videos. It's one video of like all the people watching it, the crew and everybody, including Gil, like just cracking up. And it was really funny to see. And I know that's the one that I have on, the camera is the exact take that we use in the movie. And I can just tell by the way where the pieces are dripping, falling and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's the second one is where I'm right after that, where I'm around the corner watching the big monitor in the director's video village, and I'm still in the suit. And so someone was it wasn't me recording, obviously I was in the suit, but somebody was filming me. First they filmed the monitor of that take, and then they turned to me going like, that's funny, and I was clapping and stuff. And so to see Slimer like laughing and clapping, because I was really watching it as Slimer at that moment. I was like watching Slimer eat a pizza and I was moving as Slimer, and I was still totally in Slimer, but watching Slimer on the monitor. And so it was a very weird experience. And so, to watch the whole thing in the theater was like watching a whole other experience because it was from a different, perspective.
Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned earlier when you were talking about in the attic, something that connects with me, which is getting into the head of Slimer. That's been something that I've always been curious about. What is the backstory of this character that we love so much? And it's nerdy, and it's the kind of thing that as a guy for the last 35 years, it's like I just wonder, and I know that there were versions of Ghostbusters sequels where they addressed it and they talked about what Slimer was in his human life. And I was just curious, you mentioned thinking about why he was there for that long. Is that something that you'd be comfortable sharing with us?
Yeah, of course.
Where you were at?
Yeah, of course. Like I said, every role that I take, I really do try to delve into it, as deeply as I can. And I want to feel who that character is before I ever show up on set so that I can be them. I can be that person or animal or dog or whatever it is. I can be that, for the audience. So I guess I should just start by saying, I don't know. I don't want to be wrong to a bunch of people who know all of this history and stuff. And so I'm not speaking, I can't speak to Slimer's history in any sort of informed, like this is what's right. But I will say, sorry, let me just clear my throat here. But I will say that it's important for an actor to know for themselves, what is it about this character that motivates them to do these things that are in the script. Otherwise, you're just sort of an automaton. You're kind of a robot doing things. And oddly enough, even if you are a robot, you still have to have a motivation. And I say that because in Y2K, I played a robot, and that was a big joke. Like, oh, I'm just a robot. You still have to be motivated. What's making this robot do these things? And so Slimer, even though he's a kind of nonsensical in a way, it's just eating and then flying through a wall, and there's not a whole lot of like, let me explain to you what's happening, why I'm, there's not a lot of that coming out of Slimer. And so but he still has to have reasons for doing what he's doing, and so that's something I had to come up with. And I started doing that the minute I found out who he was. And I'm kind of laughing because before I found out that it was Slimer, I thought that I was going to be playing Gollum, because I was told, oh, it's a green guy. And they kept leading me down, like they wouldn't tell me who it was. And, oh, we're going to London. And I looked up what's shooting in London right now. Oh, Lord of the Rings is shooting in London. I know it. I'm going to be Gollum. And so I started researching Gollum, and I started practicing Gollum, and started doing all of this Gollum stuff. And when it turned out to not be Gollum, I had to shift gears, obviously, and start going more into like watching the Slimer videos and all of that stuff. As far as his mindset, Slimer's, and I say his just because that's how we all, Slimer might not be a male, might not be a person at all, who knows, right? What made Slimer become Slimer, especially now that we see that vacuums can become ghosts. It's hard to say what made Slimer. But I will say that okay, so in my own belief, I think because of what slime is, it's the emotional,
It's
my
physical representation.
yeah, my thought on it is Slimer is slimy. He's more slimy than all the other ghosts. Mowgli doesn't have any slime. There's so many different levels of slime. So my thought on it was that Slimer is so slimy because he's so emotional. He's got a lot of emotions to handle, and so he's got an overflow of emotions, which leads to an overflow of slime. And that is where I began building my character. What is it about this character that's causes him to have these emotions? That if somebody has somebody, like we've all met people who are overly emotional, they might go from one emotion to the next, or really feel comfortable emoting when other people don't. And there's just different levels. And so what is this level of emotion on this character? What is it that would make him so emotional? And then building on that, what is it that would make him hide out in an attic for so long when he's has the ability to go out and do things? So to speak to some of the things I came across looking at his history, I did just literally throw those out. That's out. The king, he's king, whatever that. I don't remember where exactly it was brought up, but the John Belushi, that it's John Belushi. No, I know, of course, John Belushi's face was used to make the original Slimer, his brows and all of that stuff. So I know how much Belushi and his movements. I watched Belushi to see his movements, and so I know how much Belushi went into the creation of Slimer. But I don't think in any way his personality or his mannerisms, or that Slimer is John Belushi after, because that's not true to his character, and it's not true to a king's character, or the gangster that I've heard, the gangster. None of those fit to me, because all of those people are protagonists, and they will, or antagonists, but I mean in a way that doesn't matter if they're good or bad, but they will go out proactively, and they won't hide out. They won't hide under a pile of trash for hundreds of years, possibly, and they wouldn't care about the kids in the firehouse. They certainly wouldn't save them, from any ghosts. And I don't think it's just in reading. I got to read the whole script, obviously, which is something. Now I go watch the movie and I come home and look up scenes, and which is a real advantage. But it was on the set as well then. So I knew, like when I was shooting the attic scene, I knew what scenes were coming up. I knew that Slimer's going to be in the kitchen with the whole family, and he's going to eat that pizza. And what that told me was he's always following this family around in the firehouse. He didn't just happen to be there right then, and hey, it just so happens there's a pizza here. He is always, like maybe the way a cat does in your house. You might not know he's right under the table right now, but sometimes you look around and there he is, and that's how I thought of Slimer, that he's somebody who is emotionally needy in a way. And he needs that togetherness, and he needs, and so it's the same story of it, from Shakespeare to Frozen Empire. It's Trevor is lonely, wants to be understood. Phoebe is lonely, wants to be understood. I mean, all of them. Callie is lonely, really, wants to be understood. Like they all want to be understood and listened to, and a integral part of the group, of whatever group you happen to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the same is true to the Ghostbuster groups that are trading patches. Everybody wants to be an integral part to the group, and they want to be accepted, and they want to be liked. And so Slimer is no different in that regard. He I think wants to be friends and wants to be liked and wants a family. And I saw the relationship, for me, the relationship for Slimer, my way of thinking of Slimer's mindset, the relationship between Trevor and Slimer was very similar to the relationship between Emily and
Phoebe.
Phoebe. Yeah, sorry. in that everybody's looking to who they think will deliver their their needs to not be lonely. And so Slimer was the same. Slimer was just like all of them in that regard.
Interesting. I've never heard somebody talk about like a character like that before. That's very captivating. I'm sorry, I was hanging on your words there, and you opened up something for me, because as you mentioned the thing about Phoebe and Melody, it's almost like, not to get too in the weeds, but it's almost like Phoebe needs Melody quite a bit, right? But it's like Slimer needs Trevor, and it's almost like they're flipped a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, what is it why hasn't he left that firehouse? What is it? And I've had like thoughts that like it brings me to tears to think about. I mean, just think about like this, for example, a child whose parents pass away and are taken from the home, but no one's aware that the child is there. And so the child is left in this empty house, just longing for and longing for and longing for and forever longing for, like not even knowing what happened. Where did everyone go? And so not that that's the exact storyline in my head, but that's the thought, that's
Yeah.
the like what happened, and I think for it kind of, I mean, for a ghost, we like having the whole storyline of having something to work through, and you've got some issue that has to be resolved or whatever. Well, Slimer must really have some heavy, stuff to solve. Otherwise, he would have moved on, right? There's something that's kept him from moving on.
I mean, that you just
Feel for Slimer.
you took a very comical character and you added so much emotional weight to it, where now like I feel bad for laughing at him.
That's why I I have to preface it whenever I mean, this is just my headspace in how do I portray the character. Honestly, I Gil could call me after listening to this and go, "Hey man, stop saying that. That is not at all, what." And then I'll have to adjust, right? And maybe the next script he's going to be a Grateful Dead fan and he's going to be at the Grateful Dead shows. Who knows? And then I'll have to adjust on who he is. But right now, somebody who hides under a pile of trash for 100 or 2 years or more. That's not a happy, that's not we to me, So I don't want to like take the fun out of the character at all, but
No.
I want to be real to it. I want to try to be honest to him.
I'm not just saying this because you're on the screen with me right now, but that's the best take on Slimer's kind of backstory that I've heard.
And then for me, it's I've noticed that no matter Slimer is also different in that no matter what he does, he's liked, he's likable, he's not really scary. He's and there are very few living people in our society who are that way. People who can be super annoying, screechy, and loud, and they're maybe inappropriate at times, but still you don't care. You just overlook it because well that's them. That's just what they do. And so that's an interesting part of his character too, is that he isn't so one dimensional in that like oh well, he's scary or he's funny or because he's not really any of those things. He's annoying and he's scary and he's funny and he's sad and he's happy and he does all of these things, but in a way that someone doesn't judge him, and that's rare. That's a rare character because in most characters that actors portray, that's we're finding the thing that makes us judged, right? What is it about a character that makes people, the audience, either like you or not like you? And the thing about Slimer that's different from most characters I've played is that he is loved and he's lovable, whether he's being scary or whether he's being funny or anything in between. And that's a rare, thing.
As we're talking about it, he is such a layered character, and
Yeah.
I think the assumption is he's comic relief, but so much more than that. I just appreciate the time and the effort you went in to really think through all of those dimensions of this character.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, he is comic relief. There's no doubt, in when he ate the pizza, he was not only integral to the story because he was eating the possessor, which I mean, I don't know how I thought they were going to cut that scene out. I was just like, oh God, please don't take that out. But I mean, I don't know what they would have had to have obviously caught possessor in some other way. And I'm still not sure what Slimer did. Is Slimer himself a containment unit? Is possessor inside him now and he's just containing him, or did it just go right through? Who was that flying out at the end? Was that Slimer or was that possessor possessing Slimer? So many questions. Because if Slimer in thousands of or hundreds of years or whatever it had been hadn't left the firehouse, what possessed him to leave the firehouse now? Was he chasing? Was he running? All
Hmm.
of those things. Was he Slimer at all?
Sounds like we need a Netflix series, and we need you to come
Yep,
back
there you
and
go.
play Slimer.
Or at least another movie right away.
Yeah.
Stat.
Oh, I'll take that. I'll take that.
Is there so we mentioned you were on the attic, and I've seen a lot of your photos. I've been following you on Instagram since I learned you were Slimer. Is there a big difference between the blue screen work and being on the set with the actors? 'Cause I saw photos of you on a blue screen, so I assume some of that was composite work, maybe at the end and whatnot. But is there a vast difference there for you?
um, well, only that I'm interacting with the actors. Well, in some cases, even on blue screen, the actor is there. So, I guess not really. It kind of helps to be on the set. Some of the set are just blue screen with no set at all, and that's it's probably easier to feel the character and to live it when you're actually breathing the dust on the books and when you're actually in the set. Maybe only in that small way, but I think as far as once you've locked the headset, once you've locked the character, I think it doesn't really matter where you're
Hmm.
doing it. And I mean, the same goes even if just in a sound booth doing audio. It's the same. I think lock into the head space. So um, I mean, it is different. Obviously, the mechanics and everything are obviously very different, but the headspace, not really.
I know in the original films, Ivan Reitman is credited as creating the voice. They used some version of his and they modulated it and whatnot. Do you have any idea, or are you briefed on where the voice came from for the Slimer?
Well, I did record a whole bunch of different sounds
Okay.
for every scene. They did record sound inside my suit, and I vocalized all of him when I was on set. And so when he was, I was doing that coming out. How much of my audio they used, I have no idea. It's hard to tell. I'm going to probably do what you do. I'm going to go frame by frame and listen and speed it up and slow it down and see if I can decipher my voice. But I really don't know whose voice they use for it. I don't know if I've heard that it was Gil's, but I've heard that about so many different parts in the movie. I don't know
Yeah.
which, what really is Gil or not. But yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I hope they use some of mine, but I don't know.
I would love to spend even just a minute talking about the librarian ghost, because that was another
Oh
one
yeah.
that we were excited to see come back, and one that we know you helped puppeteer. And so, what was that like? What was that experience like for you? Was the same care put into bringing back that ghost as Slimer? And yeah, what was that like?
Um, I have to be honest and say not as much in that one because I didn't find out that I was going to be doing that. It was just sort of a last minute. And I wasn't like the puppeteer. There were like six of us. And I actually was only on when she charges forward and her jaw comes out and then the arms come up. There was Robin, man, okay, I won't remember all the names. So there was Bill pushed it forward. I was actually just when her arms come up, the her dress rips off, and so I was the left arm dress, and so I pulled and I kind of had to do like a flowy so that it looks like the dress kind of flows off, and then someone on the right side was doing the right arm, and then someone also was doing the right arm dress. And so I was just the left arm dress. So when you see, and I did look at that, I was watching it in the movie. I was like, oh, do you see that? Look how great that dress flaps just right. Um, you know, that was almost as awesome as Slimer. When I didn't expect to have anything to do with that scene, and then Ariane was like, "Hey, Kevin, you think you could come help?" I was like, "Oh yeah!" And I ran over and we kind of swapped the positions of who was doing what, a few times, but it kind of settled on the positions that we were in. So there was Jeff was doing the left arm, I believe. Robin was on the right arm, and Bill was in the back. And I think Ariane was just kind of watching the monitor to make sure everything was good. And then I was on the dress. And then I don't know the name of the girl. It's a person from London I'd never met. She was doing the other sleeve, and we were all in the full suit, blue screen, hooded, everything, and it was just the most fun. It was so awesome. And then same thing, I would get to go around and watch it and go, wow, look, there she is. It's a librarian. No way.
That's cool.
So yeah,
That's
it
awesome.
was awesome. And I was just like a kid in a candy shop doing that. And I just so grateful to Ariane for it's funny because I had that completely separate, from Slimer. Like, yes, I got to do Slimer, and grateful to all the same people, right? All the same people who Ariane and Gil and Jason and all the people who invited me to be a part of being Slimer. I still think like, wow, that's so great. They let me do, the librarian ghost. That's so great. It's like completely separate. And so, yeah, that was awesome. Cause I remember her from 1984. I totally remember
Oh
her.
yeah. She was traumatizing to all of
Yeah.
us as little
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
would love
Same.
to I'm kind of bummed that we don't know at least that someone's headcanon for her. She's been stuck in that library for
Yeah.
all that time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's her story? Now we need to know that too. So
Hmm.
maybe you could do a little homework for us.
You've done a lot of stunt work too, non Ghostbuster stunt work, and stunt performers, terrifying. I envy you. I just wanted to. Is there a specific stunt maybe in your career that's I don't want to say memorable, but one that you look at that and you're like, I did that, and I can't believe I did that.
Definitely. I love this question, and because I love telling the story. I did a commercial for Samsung, the telephones, and it was a commercial that I filmed about 1 month before they all started catching on fire. And so the commercial that I made never got aired, which is I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad, but good or bad, I don't know. because now I'm not sure if I'm supposed to share the footage. If you notice on Instagram, you'll see my picture is me hanging from a helicopter. And I have done a lot of stunts. I've been set on fire. I've been hit by cars. I've been, bicycle crashes. I've done everything. I have broken every bone in my body with the exception of my collarbones. So I've taken a lot of spills. I've been injured in a lot of different ways. But by far, the greatest stunt I've ever done is hanging off of this helicopter. And what we did was I was stunt doubling a kid that was supposed to. I'm walking along this sidewalk that has a hill behind me, and a helicopter comes rising up over the hill. And without looking back or anything else, the helicopter comes. I raise my arm up and I grab the skid, and it carries me away, and it takes me. And it really does take me. It was I don't know how many feet it was up, but it was taller than like a 10-story building. Like it was so stupid high. And the way we did it was I had a very thin little cord that I would reach up and I would grab, and then they would cut to whatever some reaction was, and then I would clip in, and then they would cut back to me and we would take off. And so I had a couple of seconds there to clip in real quick. And so I was still hanging on to the skid. It wasn't supposed to look like I was attached. I was obviously supposed to look like I was hanging on with my hands. And so I'd reach up and grab it, and had one this way and one that. So I was hanging on to the skid, and the helicopter went way up in the air, and then it would turn the sharp turn. And as it turned, it would like swoop my legs, like, the centrifugal force would like really lift my legs up. And one of the takes, he did it. I always tell this, my fear is broken. I really don't have like a fear. So I don't know what, like I can walk up to the top of a building and just lean my toes over and nothing. Like I really don't have any sort of adrenaline rush. And when I do get any little adrenaline rush, I'm like, oh yeah, look what I did. So I have to like really do something extreme. And so I was hanging off of this helicopter, and as he was banking, it started lifting my legs and pulling me away from the helicopter, and I could feel my fingers pulling away from the skid. And just for a brief moment, I got, oh, and I felt an adrenaline rush, because for a moment I thought of coming off and falling. And obviously I'm not going to fall. I've got my thing. But he stopped, took me not even a second to like, oh, of course, no, I've got this thing. I'm fine. Like, it was, and then the bank stopped, and but in that one brief bank right there where my fingers were slipping, I had that thought of, oh crap, what am I thinking? But it went away pretty quickly. And I jump off high things all the time, and I don't have any kind of adrenaline like rush at all. But because I got that adrenaline rush, that was the one that like, sticks out.
My hands are clammy for you right now, just so you know.
My stomach is nauseous.
That's amazing.
Thanks.
Wow.
Maybe I'll post that. I should post that. I mean, the most they can do is tell me to take it down, I guess.
Yeah, that's right.
It never aired. We shot it, and it never aired because that was about a month before all of the Samsung phones started catching on fire. And so they put the kibosh on all the Samsung commercials. I still don't know, why don't they just like bring it back, right? Just play it. I mean, it's not like timely. It's not like I had the year on, on watch on or anything. They could just replay it anytime. So I don't know why they didn't. But for some reason they never aired it. And so now I've got all this incredible footage, tons. I've got hours and hours, literally, because a bunch of different people on the set, different crew members, and the pilot videotaped it for me. And I've got so much awesome footage of me jumping on and hanging on, and and we did it probably eight or nine times, where it would swoop and take me up and bring me around, and then it would lower down, and I would unhook and drop down. It would take off, and we'd do it again, and we did that a bunch of times.
That is wild.
We haven't done a podcast in a while, but we have a podcast. And when this episode airs on the podcast, the title is going to be "So I Was Hanging Off of a Helicopter."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, we are so grateful for your time. We are so thankful that we get to work with you, and thankful to Cool Waters for helping make it happen. We are so excited to offer a signing to the group. I know that we're excited to start. We have the new Slimer project where we're going to try to get as many people who help make Slimer happen. And of course, we got to kick it off with you. So we're really excited about that, and so many other things coming up. So again, just we appreciate you so much for like really what I'm blown away by is the thought and the intention, not only from the production team, but from you individually, and bringing back someone that was so meaningful for us growing up, a character that we all adore so much. And I love that you had the same adoration for Slimer that we do.
No, thank you.
And
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
I can't say anything better than that to kind of wrap up here, but I can tell you this. You talked about wanting to get into that character and wanting not only for him to look like the 84, but to feel like the 84. And when I was sitting in that theater for the first time watching that movie, I saw my old friend Slimer on screen, and he was the Slimer that I remembered from when I was a kid. And that's a gift that we can never repay in an appropriate way. So thank you for that, for bringing Slimer back to us, and for caring so much about doing so. And thank you for the time. And on your birthday of all days, we get to have a chat with you. It was so nice. And thank you for working with us, us nerds, and keeping the spirits alive.
Thank
There you
you.
go.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I will quickly add that most of the actors on the set said similar things to what you said, that like, wow, that meeting Slimer has, been so great for me. So I totally understand that this is all about the character and, how important the character is to everyone. And I'm just so grateful to have been given the opportunity. And, I just hope I can, live up to who Slimer is, because I know everyone really loves Slimer. So